In just a few years, Huawei has become the world's second largest cellular phone company. Its revenues reached $65 billion in the first half of this year, an increase of 13% over the same period last year. But the stellar rise of the Chinese telecommunications giant is under threat. It's been banned from selling equipment for the rollout of 5G technology in the UK, mirroring a similar ban in the US.
From the end of this year, telecoms operators must not buy any 5G equipment from Huawei. And once the telecom security bill is passed, it will be illegal for them to do so.
These restrictions could force the company to leave the US and UK markets.
Difficult to say. Clearly, they have a lot of existing business, everything from smartphones through to 3 and 4G, as well as this proposed 5G. I think if there's no business and they're prevented from doing business, I would expect them to make decisions to withdraw. Otherwise, why would you stay in a place where you couldn't do business?
While Huawei faces opposition in its attempts to dominate the communications industry, pressure is also mounting against the Chinese government's efforts to dominate the seas. Abandoning its policy of non-interference, Washington says Beijing's claims over the South China Sea are illegal.
The world will not allow Beijing to treat the South China Sea as its maritime empire. America stands with our South Asian allies and partners in protecting their sovereign rights to offshore resources, consistent with their rights and obligations under international law.
US military equipment providers like Lockheed Martin have increased sales to China's rivals in the region. Beijing accuses Washington of meddling in its internal affairs and it's slapping sanctions on Lockheed Martin.
China firmly opposes U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. We urge the U.S. to honor its commitment to the One China principle and the 3 China-U.S. joint communiques, stop arms sales to Taiwan, and military ties with Taiwan so as not to cause further damage to China-U.S. relations and the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait.
Despite these rifts and rising protectionism, China's international trade is growing at a steady pace. Exports increased by 0.5% in June compared to the same period last year. Analysts had expected a drop of 1.5%. Imports jumped by 2.7%, shredding expectations of a 10% decline. China's trade surplus with the US has also widened to $29.4 billion compared to $28 billion in May. But rising restrictions on Chinese companies like Huawei could cut them off from some of the world's most lucrative markets, and that could derail growth in the world's second largest economy. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
For more on this, Roderic Wye joins us now from London. He's Associate Fellow of the Asia Programme at Chatham House. Welcome back to the programme, Roderic. Now, this is a major U-turn for the UK government, which just in January gave Huawei the green light to help develop the country's 5G networks. What's changed between then and now?
I think 2 big things have changed. One, there has been clearly a reassessment of the security challenge that China poses, and especially Chinese involvement in the very sensitive infrastructure of 5G. And secondly, of course, there has been the US sanctions on Huawei, which have made it very much more difficult for companies to do business with both Huawei and US companies.
Yes, now the UK's Cultural Secretary Oliver Dowden did say that this latest decision was based on national security grounds, among other things. It's something that the US had said earlier when the UK decided to give Huawei access back in January. What is the national security threat that Huawei poses exactly?
Well, the threat really is because of the sort of fundamental importance of the 5G infrastructure, which is going to be affecting all areas of life and activity in the UK and elsewhere once 5G networks get up and running. And the problem with Huawei is, first of all, its connections with the Chinese government. But leaving those aside, all Chinese entities are required under the Chinese national security law to do the government's bidding on security related issues. And that is just too much of a risk for the UK and indeed other countries. We are not the only country to have banned Huawei from 5G networks to bear. And political pressure has been rising in the UK to take a more hard-eyed look at Huawei and its potential problems.
Now, as we know, the UK announcement came shortly after the US declared China's expansion in the South China Sea to be completely unlawful. Washington has long opposed China's actions in those disputed waters, but only now has called them illegal. Why do you think the US has sharpened its language on that front?
Well, we are seeing, as you are well aware, and across the board, really deterioration in the relationship between China and the United States. And this is just another aspect of it. The fact is that China's territorial claims in the South China Sea are extraordinary. They really have very little basis in international law. Hitherto, the US has not taken a formal stand on the validity of these various claims. And there are other claimants in the South China Sea, Philippines, Vietnam, etc., who have claims at least as valid as those of China to the features in the South China Sea.
Now, for many years, China has let sleeping dogs lie, so to speak, when it comes to the South China Sea, leaving the area virtually uninhabited. But we've seen this rapid expansion of its military bases virtually out of nowhere. We've also seen military exercises conducted by Beijing over the waters. What is China's ambition in the South China Sea?
Pretty clearly, it is to dominate those important sea lines and to reinforce China's own wide-ranging claims in the area. And they feel that by the sort of, if you like, possession is 9/10 of the law, by erecting these artificial islands and then fortifying them, they are increasing both their political and military power within that area.
And not winning any friends in the process, it seems. Roderic Wye from Chatham House, thank you again for joining us on the program.